I get the feeling I'm going to be interrupted a lot in this video. Planes flying overhead and stuff. I just hope the audio turns out okay. So this video is about answering the question, is veganism a diet? Now, this is going to be obvious for people who are familiar with the topic, but this video is kind of for people who are not familiar with what veganism is, and therefore might have heard through other people that veganism is a diet. And this is why there's so much misunderstanding around veganism. Is veganism a diet? No, veganism is not a diet. Veganism is much more broad than a diet, and therefore it includes a lot more than just what food you choose to put into your body. Veganism is the refusal, I suppose, to use animals for one's benefit in any way, or to use animals at all. Now that can include food, and it does, of course. That's how people are most familiar with it, because we typically eat 3 times a day. So that's the one that you see, but it extends beyond food. It's all about refusing to exploit animals for our purposes. It's about not using animals and everything that may include. Animal use really is woven into a lot of our everyday living, okay? You go to walk out the door, you put on a jacket. Was that jacket made by the products of an animal? To call veganism a diet is to completely misunderstand what veganism is, and it is to portray veganism as something much more frivolous, something much more self-centered, a lonesome, singular, solitary practice, something that does not involve anyone besides oneself with selfish aims. Diets require discipline. Veganism requires morals. We are not the same. We are not the same. And I know I hear this a lot. If you are saying something like, oh, I would go vegan, but I just can't resist cheese, or I can't resist whatever cooking ingredient you have that you seem to have some kind of attachment to, and you're talking about it as something that requires discipline, you're not thinking about veganism in the right way. You are thinking about it as if you still have the choice, like as if your morality gives you that choice. So let's take this into morality. If you were attracted to a certain person, would you say, I would respect their consent, but I just can't resist. I don't have the willpower, like I don't have the discipline to resist sexually assaulting that person. You see, a moral person with a moral character would not see that as a discipline problem. They would see that as a moral problem. If you were to sexually assault someone, that would reflect on your moral character. It shouldn't require strength to do that. And if you think it requires strength and discipline, you are thinking about consent in a completely different way. Now, you may say, apples and oranges, that doesn't apply to veganism. Well, animals are sexually exploited. Their reproduction organs are used in animal industries, many animal industries, for entertainment, in dog racing, for horse racing, breeding certain species of horse, for food, in dairy, for example, inseminating dairy cows so that they will lactate. Okay, these are exploiting the sexual reproductive organs without consent. This is sexual exploitation that we see in these animal industries. So I fail to see where the cutoff point is if you're just talking about the difference in species. You don't think it's possible to sexually exploit an animal? Should we go through the examples? From my life recently, I tried on a hat. It was a very nice hat, really nice. I thought I looked really cool in this hat. And then I took the hat off, I looked at the inside label, and I saw that it was made from felt, right? And felt is sheep's wool. Felt is made from sheep's wool somehow, I know that much. And I put the hat back, not wearing it. On principle, I'm not gonna benefit from the exploitation of an animal. I don't want to reward that industry. I don't want to normalize that kind of behavior, right? It is something that simply is outside of a category of what I would allow myself to do. It's not a matter of discipline. It's not a matter of discipline. It's a matter of morals. Now you might think I'm making a big deal out of this, but that is an opinion coming from ignorance. Let's talk about the wool industry, shall we? Let's talk about what they do for wool production on these farms. I'm going to summarize and I am going to generalize, but whenever you see animal products or services, there is exploitation because animals cannot consent. So it's all exploitative. But I want to really bring home to you how exploitative it is, just so you feel it. Wool is typically sheared seasonally. It's like shearing season on these wool farms. And so they bring on a lot of seasonal workers. They have a certain quota to meet and they have to shear the sheep quite fast, right? Imagine there's just hundreds of sheep, and these seasonal workers, they don't stay at the farms, they're brought on temporarily, and they have to shear like hundreds of sheep, right? With a sharp electric clipper, okay? So they got to get through, they got to shear the whole body of that sheep in quick time, as fast as possible. The faster they do it, the more they get paid, right? There's competitiveness in how fast they can, because the incentives are driving towards shearing the sheep quickly, not shearing the sheep gently. There's no financial incentive that's pushing anyone towards shearing sheep gently. So they're shearing the sheep with fast electric clippers. Do you think those sheep ever get cut? You think they get clipped by those razors? You bet they do. We have it on video. I'm just reporting to you from these farms that you've probably never visited. The sheep doesn't know what's going on. No one is able to communicate to the sheep what is about to happen. So they just see a big burly man come along, pick them up and flip them on their backs, right? The sheep doesn't know what's going on. So what do you think the sheep does? This animal, what does this animal do? The animal struggles, the animal kicks and bleats and is struggling, right? And the shearer has to hold them down. And you might think that on your first 5 sheep that day, you might think, yeah, I can handle that. I mean, it's hard work, but I can handle it. I can handle that with care. Okay, go on to sheep 90, sheep 100, sheep 110. And every single sheep is struggling because they don't understand what's going on. Do you think maybe that seasonal worker might start to get a little bit frustrated on their 100th sheep that they have to shear? So at first, maybe they're saying to themselves, yeah, I'll be gentle. On their 100th sheep, they start doing things like they start holding them down in more aggressive ways. They start putting them under their foot, right? Being a bit more forceful. And then on their 1000th sheep, they are so pissed off by that point that they just punch the sheep. They use the clippers to just beat each sheep into submission if they try to struggle. And we have video evidence for this. This is no secret in the industry. This is no secret. I'm reporting to you what actually happens. I'm not paid by any kind of farmers lobby. I'm not paid by any kind of propaganda. I am someone who wants to know the truth. And I'm hoping that I'm speaking to someone on the other end of this video that also wants the truth without some kind of put through some kind of marketing spin to make them feel good about themselves, about their habits and their activities and their purchasing choices. I'm not here to make you feel good. I'm here to tell you the reality that no one wants to talk about. And of course, animals can't consent. So even if it was lighter than that, animals can't consent. Say it with me, everyone. Animals can't consent. Animals don't get paid anything. They don't get to choose their living conditions. They don't get to form unions, right? They don't get off time. They don't get break time unless their master allows it. They are slaves. They're owned, right? We reached a point in our history where we started to see that as wrong as owning humans, but we never reached that point with animals where we question animal ownership and whether that is ethically right, despite the fact that animals cannot consent and do not consent to the many ghastly things that they're put through by their owners. But also, it's in our paradigm, the way we see animals. We see it as being okay to confine them, okay to abuse them, okay to exploit them, and then when they're no longer of any use to us, when there's no longer any profit to extract from them, it's okay to kill them. But here's the asterisk. People are okay with supporting, financing and benefiting from the abuse of animals as long as they don't see it happen. Activists put the footage where you're going to see it, and that is upsetting to a lot of people. Sometimes people's anger is redirected in the correct places. Sometimes they look at what they're doing to support and prop up these industries. They go vegan, they decide to stop participating, and at other times their anger is simply misdirected, and it's often misdirected at the messengers, at the journalists, at the activists, who simply want them to see what it is they're paying for and to put forward a new paradigm that they may have not considered before. So it's likely that before you heard me speak, a vegan and an animal rights activist, it's very likely that you heard an opinion from someone who is not a vegan or an animal rights activist. They are likely to have got us off on the wrong foot, shall we say. Hopefully what I'm saying here is making sense to you. I'd like for anyone who sees this to really consider going vegan. But at least, even if I'm unsuccessful in that, at least maybe I set the record straight for what veganism is, so that next time you hear non-vegan talking about veganism and misrepresenting veganism, maybe you can actually tell them, actually, you got it wrong. It's not a diet. Veganism is about animal use. It's about refusing to use animals, and it's seeking to end animal use. If you go the activism route, you're trying to influence things in a way that stops people from using and abusing animals. In any industry that uses animals, that exploits animals, there's often a case that's made that's like, well, not all farmers, you know, not all labs torture animals, just some of them, you know. And there's this kind of wishful thinking that maybe I buy from a supply chain that doesn't abuse animals. That's a very cowardly stance to have. It's a very cowardly way to live. And if you are brave enough to look under the cover, you will see that animal abuse, just flat out abuse, disrespect, disregard for animals, torture, is an inevitability based on our regard for them or our lack of regard for them. Instead of just giving these conglomerates the benefit of the doubt, which is like being in Plato's cave and choosing to stay in the cave instead of walking outside and seeing the real world. If you actually look under the cover, you're going to see some really nasty stuff. It will be there if you look for it. If you look in the egg industry, if you look in the milk industry, in the dairy industry, the entertainment industry, you're going to see some really nasty stuff. You'd have to be inhuman for it to not have some kind of visceral effect on your psyche. So let's call it what it is. It's animal abuse. Not because of some kind of criminal conspiracy, but because of our paradigm, because our mindset has never evolved past seeing animals as objects, commodities, and slaves. Animals have slave status in our society. It's not a secret. It's not a conspiracy. Our mindset has always been to place animals beneath us, and that whatever we decide to do to them, to degrade them, it'll be worth it if some human somewhere demands it. The experience of the animal is so rarely ever taken into consideration with any of these industries. And if it is brought up by an activist, it's often dismissed with straw men, with these wishful thinking scenarios. What if there is a farm out there? What if there is a magical farm? It's just not the reality. There's all kinds of sophistry that's employed to stop discourse around this subject, to mire our progress for animals, for the sake of animals, not for us, for the sake of animals. The status quo wants you to think that veganism is a diet, because people go off diets. They try them for a month, they try them for 6 months, and then they try another one. And diets are a personal choice involving only the individual. No one else is involved, right? Our use of animals affects others. It affects the animals. It's my relationship between me and hundreds or maybe thousands of animals that I don't see. And just because I don't see them doesn't mean they don't exist. Okay? If a tree falls in the woods and no one's around to hear it, does it make a sound? It certainly does. If a pig is thrown into a gas chamber alive to asphyxiate, because that's the most cost-effective way of murdering that pig, does her scream make a sound? It most certainly does, whether I'm there to hear it or not. I will never touch bacon for as long as I live, and I don't need it because I have plant-based bacon and every other product I could need. It's easy to go vegan, guys. And it doesn't take discipline, it takes morals. Diets are frivolous. Diets are temporary. Diets are selfish. That's why in a debate, the first thing the opposition tries to do is to misinform you about what veganism is. And they will try and attack a false definition of veganism, because the true definition of veganism is pretty hard to refute. Anyway, that's my rant for today. I hope that you subscribe if you're a newcomer here, and hopefully I'll see you in another video. Thanks.
All right then. What sort of flavour am I going to be when you eat me?
What? Me? Gobbling up human beings? All the others, yes, but not me. I is a nice giant. I is a freaky giant. There's not another giant like me in all the giant country. I is the big, friendly giant.